Canterbury was a garrison town in that it had a military presence and had a military presence for 150 years, but it wasn't considered a primary target for bombing. In actual fact, when the Second World War first started, children were evacuated to Canterbury from places such as London. So Canterbury became a reception area for evacuees. And it wasn't until the fall of Holland and then Belgium and then France in 1940 that alarm bells began to ring, and the English people in the southeast began to fear an invasion. So then all the evacuees who had been in Kent for only 6 to 9 months had to go back again. And at the same time, Canterbury children and all the main schools were evacuated out, mainly to Wales and in Cornwall. The bombing of Canterbury was part of a series of raids known as the Baedeker raids. Now, these were so named because the legend has it that the Luftwaffe chose historical targets in England from the Baedeker guides. Any historical centre, such as Canterbury, that had 2 stars or more, became a target for these so-called Baedeker raids. Now, the purpose of these raids was to destroy English morale, British morale, by taking out our centres of cultural heritage. The flares dropped on the cathedral in advance of the raid in the early hours of Monday, the 1st of June 1942. There's an initial wave before the main wave of bombing. There is an initial wave where aircraft drop phosphorus flares on a target to illuminate it. And it was quite clear right from the word go that the cathedral was the target. There was no pretense at all about wanting to take out the garrison, the infantry barracks, or anything like that. The cathedral was specifically the target. And in fact, eyewitnesses at the time report the stone of the cathedral brilliantly illuminated like a midsummer's day in reds and yellows as the flares just gradually dropped from the sky. Of course, everyone feared the worst. But, as luck would have it, about 20 minutes before the main wave of bombers came in, a slight breeze got up, and it was blowing to the southeast, and all the chandelier flares that were heading towards the cathedral started to drift towards the southeast. That was where the bomb load was unloaded. It's often described as the divine wind, that little breeze that came up and actually saved the cathedral. Men were stationed on every stretch of the cathedral roof, and so when the incendiary bombs came down and they clattered and the chemicals mixed and the phosphorus started to fire, they actually threw sacking on the bombs, picked them up physically and threw them over the edge onto the grass. And thus the cathedral was saved by a little bit of help from God, as they say, in the form of the divine wind, but also these brave blokes who were up there actually throwing the bombs over the edge. The city wall escaped pretty much unscathed in that there was no part of it that was destroyed as a direct result of enemy action, but bombs falling close by, high explosive bombs, did cause part of the structure, particularly in the Riding Gate area, and the stretch from Riding Gate going around to the Windsheep Gate. The foundations were shaken and cracks formed, but it wasn't immediately obvious. There was a small collapse by the Riding Gate, but it wasn't until the 1950s and even early 1960s when the underlying damage in the city wall finally showed itself. There was a significant collapse at the Riding Gate when the city wall just collapsed into the moat, and another section roughly opposite the East Station, where there's a concrete footbridge now. A part of the city wall then collapsed, and it was immediately rebuilt in facsimile form so that you wouldn't really know that anything had actually happened to it. concentration of bombs fell on the southeast quadrant. Of course, St George's Church was right in the centre of it. No high explosive bombs hit the church, but there were a significant number of incendiary bombs. The church was effectively gutted by the incendiary bombs, which destroyed the interior and the roof. But remarkably, the church, the main structure of the church, the flint and the stone, survived completely intact. So in the immediate aftermath of the 1st of June Blitz, it was possible to see that yes, the church had been gutted, but the potential for complete restoration and repair was very much there. So when St George's was gutted by the incendiary fires, the city fathers, the city council, saw an opportunity to widen the street. So rather than be restored, the demolition of the church was ordered, and an attempt to demolish the church was made in the middle of June 1942. They took out the crenellations, the castellations, and the top of the belfry when an old cathedral canon, known as Canon Crum, who was in the south precincts raking through the remains of his house, which had been bombed, saw the attempt to demolish the church, and he ran and actually personally intervened and stopped the demolition of the tower. He then phoned up his friend, I think his name was Sir Geoffrey Richardson, who was head of the Ancient Monument Society in London, and this guy got on the next train to Canterbury and confirmed that absolutely not, the church was not to be destroyed. And finally, a good old British compromise was decided upon. They would keep the tower and demolish the rest of the church, and the tower would become a key feature in a development of new shops that would be arranged round it. So it was thanks to a portly cathedral canon that tower is there today.